StreamYard's quite nice.
Let me know once you share when you start the event.
All right. It says waiting for the foundation. It says live 18 seconds.
Live in 18 seconds.
Yep, there it is. We're live on YouTube.
Perfect. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Munich.NET meetup, this time with a very special guest. Well, let's not waste a lot of time in intros because we are late already. We had some technical problems, forgive me. But this is our meetup, the first time that we're doing this through YouTube with a new platform, and it was kind of tricky. Sorry for that. So let's start. For those of you that come from the .NET Foundation virtual user group and you don't know me, I am George, organizer of Munich.NET meetup with more than 1,000 members currently, and since some months ago, I think summer, organizer of Munich TypeScript meetup with around, I think, 430 members. If you want to contact me, you can do it in Twitter or GitHub or my blog, but you can also, of course, contact me through meetup.com. Just join one of my groups and find me. So just before we start, I want to say big thanks to the .NET Foundation virtual user group, and especially to Dave Norderer. It was only this Sunday, I think, that we set this thing up to stream from YouTube with their support, and Dave gave a solution in minutes. Why did we want that to stream from YouTube? Because this event became more popular actually than expected, and my Zoom plan just wasn't enough. Feel free to join this user group. It will always have something interesting for you to see, and now with the coronavirus lockdowns, it will help you to find things to watch all the time. So let's not delay anymore. The moment we are all waiting for, I was actually waiting for this for quite so long. A Swiss Army knife of knowledge with his own channel in YouTube. You may know it or you may don't. It's computer stuff they didn't teach you at school. A channel with things that you may or you may not know. It's not that important. It's presented in a unique Scott HANSELMAN way, let's say, from a beginner's level to more advanced stuff. And believe me, you will always find something you didn't know or didn't remember. So, Scott, the virtual stage is yours. Let's make that, guys, everyone, a discussion. Whenever you have something to ask to Scott, feel free to type it. There is a small text box next to the video feed. Feel free to ask anything, and I will pass it on to Scott. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm going to share my screen, but I'm going to let you also know that George is in the backstage. And if you have questions, what's going to be fun, because this is not a YouTube, this is live. We've got Johan and George backstage managing this. You can ask questions and they're going to interrupt, because we don't want to do just a YouTube where I'm talking at you. We're going to have live Q&A, live demos, and have some fun. So be sure to ask your questions. They're going to collect them, and then hopefully I'll just be talking, and then George will just pop in and have some questions for me, which is going to be great. And again, I want to say thank you to our friends at the .NET Foundation who are making this possible in the time of the coronavirus. Hello to everybody. I see lots of wonderful friends in the YouTube here. We've got Dominic from Rosenheim. We've got Ben Buttigieg from Chippenham. We've got folks in Mauritius. Klaus is asking if I'm well. I'm getting better. My arm's still not 100%, but I'm getting stronger every day. All right, friends. Cool. So there's a couple of exciting things going on. I'm not going to go and do like a whole PowerPoint, but I do bring a couple of slides that we can talk a little bit about. And if you have specific questions, I want you to interrupt, and we'll talk about them. The things that I'm most excited about right now are .NET 5, the future of .NET. I'm excited about WSL, the Windows subsystem for Linux. I'm excited about the new Visual Studio that just came out with support for .NET 5. I really love Windows Terminal. And I've also recently upgraded my blog from a 15-year-old version of .NET up to the latest .NET. And I recently upgraded my podcast site and my home site to .NET 5, so I can show you a little bit of that as well. Hi to our friends in India, and the Uno platform team is here as well. That's exciting. Cool. So, just last week we had .NET Conf, our big community conference. Is a 10th anniversary, which is very exciting. And these are some pictures of us pre-lockdown, and hopefully we will get back to that time again. We won't be virtual for hopefully too much longer. I definitely would like to come and hang out with our friends in Munich. Now, you know that .NET 5 is out now. That means it's in what they call general availability. So if I bring up my browser here, and I'm going to bring it over onto this monitor, and I'm going to go and hit the .NET website. When I hit download, you'll see that we've got a couple of choices here. There's the original .NET framework for Windows, and then there's these two .NETs here. And, Microsoft is not really good at naming stuff. It can be a little bit confusing. And even the name .NET can be confusing, because with something like Java, there's the Java language, the Java runtime, the Java SDK. But with .NET, because we support lots of different languages, you've got .NET, and then on top of .NET, you've got C# and F# and VB and things like that. So .NET Core 3.1 is what they call an LTS, a long-term support. And that means if you really want to not be upgrading every year, you just want to have a good, stable version of .NET, and then all you have to do is take the security patches, then the long-term support of .NET Core is what you'd want to go with. That'll be supported for, I think, 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. Now, the current version of .NET, the one that just came out, is .NET 5. And now that one was a very easy upgrade. I'll actually show you how I did it. We're going to alternate every other year between a current version and an LTS version. And this isn't a statement about support. This isn't a statement about quality, rather. It's a statement only about ongoing support. So you can actually go down to the bottom, and I think we have a section here on the support policy, where we talk about exactly how long this stuff lasts. And if you go here, it talks about when the dates are when this will be supported for. So, for example, we've got .NET Core 3.1 here, and .NET Core will have support until 2022, right? So you've got lots of time. Even .NET Core 2.1 is still supported into 2021. So these LTS releases will be around for a long time. Now, if we go over here to .NET 5, we have our download page. You can download the current versions of .NET, and the version you notice changed, but also the name changed. That .NET 5.0 versus .NET Core 3.0. You see how we removed that word core, and that can be a little bit confusing. I think that some folks, again, we're not so good at naming things, but the intention of calling it that .NET 5.0 is to let the folks that are using 4.8 to know that we've got so much good support for Windows APIs, for the base class libraries, that this is a good time for you as a 4.x developer to go and move to 5. Additionally, the support that we have now in WinForms is really cool. So, for example, if I go out to a command line right now, I like to use the command line for demonstrations, but you can certainly use Visual Studio if it makes you happy as well. I see some nice questions here in the chat. Hessam Kalor is asking about my arm. It is getting a little bit better. I can move it almost this high. So thank you very much for asking about my health. That's very kind. Adam Stapleton is asking about, are there any plans to make the adoption of new things faster? Yes, in fact, we have, I'll actually show you, we have day one support in Azure, App Service. So when .NET 5 came out, we were actually available in Azure App Service on day one. So yes, the intent is to have things available more quickly. All right, let's go back out to the command line here, and we will go and make a folder called München. And if I go down here, I've got my empty folder, and I say .NET new. I have all the different choices of things that I could potentially make. This, I think, is really cool. Windows Forms. I could say make a Windows Forms application. So I'm going to go and say .NET new WinForms. Lots of different choices about what things we can make. All right, there we go. So here's my application. I can say .NET run and check that out. So I say .NET run, and look, that quickly I've got a Windows application. In fact, we also released a thing called WebView 2, because you know that the new Edge browser is based on Chromium, and the Chromium rendering engine, the part that renders the HTML, can now be hosted inside of a WinForms control. So you can have hybrid applications that are both Windows apps and also have a web browser, so that if you click on something, you could show a PDF or an invoice or anything that the web view could potentially render. Now, if I open up Visual Studio, I'll open that up and I'll bring it over onto this monitor. We could potentially open up this WinForms application. So let's go and say, open a project. Now this project here that I just made, I hit start dot and bring it up right here. You see? I can now go and open that. Pop that open. Leandro is asking about the new line of ARM devices. Is .NET 5 ready for ARM64? Yeah, there's a lot of people thinking about ARM64 right now, and work is being done to get folks up to speed. So yes, the intent will be that things will work great on a Mac. So yeah, hang in there. If I double click on this form, we've actually got a visual designer inside of Visual Studio here, so I can do my WinForms applications. Oops. A little hiccup there on my browser here. Are we still there? All right. I think my power just went out there. My UPS picked it up. Having some challenges with the power here in the US lately, so I've been having some hiccups. Cool. So what was I saying? Look at the ARM devices, WinForms. Oh yeah, one of the things that I wanted to show you was this. When we right click and we say publish, and I can go and pop this up, we can publish potentially to like a folder. And when I publish to a folder, I'll publish, either I can publish click once, which has had a lot of improvements, or I can publish just directly to that folder. And what I'll do here is I will publish to that folder. And I can say here, how do I want this target runtime? Do I want it to be a portable runtime or use a pre-installed one? See, I can do self-contained. We'll target WinX64. And then I could say I want to produce like a single file. Make this as small as I possibly can. And then I could say publish. All right. And then if we drop in here and go bin, I think we said release on that one, didn't we? Yeah, I think we did. And look, there we've got a .exe. Right now, this will now pack in the Visual Studio. So it'll pack in the .NET runtime into one executable. So the idea is you could hand someone your copy of your application and it would just run. So instead of having the pile of .NET DLLs, kind of loose DLLs lying around, you can just hand someone, München.exe and it would just work, which is really, really cool. So that's compiling right now. You can pack that up. It will then unzip into memory, which is really cool. In the previous versions of .NET. In fact, it would unfold into a temp folder, and then it would load the DLLs off of the temp folder, which was a little bit slow and a little bit frustrating. So single file executables are good.
Hey, Scott, there are numerous questions and numerous technical problems also. I was
what's going on? Technical problem.
Yeah, well, hopefully everything will work now.
Is my audio sounding bad or something?
Sorry?
What's the technical problems?
I was locked out. Actually, my camera was not working for some reason, and I couldn't join the discussion, although there are numerous...
I was wondering where you went.
Yeah, there were numerous questions from everyone. Sorry for this. Phil, I'm sweaty.
Well, there is a question from live television, right?
Yeah. There's a question from Rames. He asks if he can use Blazor WebAssembly for non-UI work, such as generating an Excel report, for example, from the browser without server-side components.
Could he use WebAssembly to generate? Okay, so that's an interesting question. So Ramesh is asking, can you use WebAssembly for non-UI work? So Blazor is primarily meant to do in-browser WebAssembly. Could you generate from something in the browser on the server? Wait a second, WebAssembly is on the front end and generate an Excel report? That's kind of that's a tough one. I don't think you really could, because to automate Excel would mean COM, and you can't do that from WebAssembly. You could certainly generate the file format. You could use Blazor to generate the XLS file, which is just an XML file and kind of a zip file. But I would want to understand that question more. So maybe Ramesh Vijayaraghavan, you can tweet me, and maybe we can have that conversation offline.
Yep. Yeah, it's anyway a question that requires more definition, because there are doing works on the browser. How many rows? How big the Excel would be? And there are many things. There is an interesting question about VB. I don't know if it's nearly dead or not dead, but there is a question forgive me if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, from Joshua. If there are any updates about VB at .NET 5?
Yeah, so VB is one of the 3 languages that we are supporting, and there is Visual Basic support answering Joshua Chidibere's comment. We're going to have support for class libraries, and the basics and stuff. But I think it's worth pointing out that the language itself, the Visual Basic language, isn't really kind of evolving. While F# has F#5 and C# has C#9, while we'll have some basic support for Visual Basic, it's not the most popular language that everyone is asking for. So if you really want to have deep support on it, you're going to want to stay on the .NET framework. So we have a conversation here on the blogs, but I would say that because we have 3 languages to think about, we're really focusing on the 2 that are evolving. So that may not be the answer that Joshua wants, but that's the answer that I have.
Yep, super. Maybe there is one more question from Francois, that he noticed publishing .NET 5 websites as a single file does not work on IIS in process mode.
That's a really interesting thing. Okay, so there's a couple of things here. I'm noticing that question, and then Juan Barahona is asking a question about Blazor and add-ins and building an add-in for Word. I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding about kind of like how DLLs and executables and processes get built. So maybe we can have that conversation. These are great questions. And hello again to everybody. We've got all these wonderful friends, George, who are coming to the Munich user group from all over the world. We got Isaac from Panama. So isn't that nice? Ordinarily, we wouldn't have someone from Panama in Germany. Isn't that lovely?
That's super.
That's great, right? Muchísimas gracias, Isaac Escobar Cardia. Okay, let's talk about this. So if you have some C# or some VB or some F#, and you know this stuff, George, you compile it to an intermediate language. And that intermediate language is called IL. And that can turn into a DLL or an EXE, but for the most part, it turns into a DLL. And a DLL is a dynamic link library. And let's think about those words, dynamic link and library. It means that it links in dynamically, but ultimately it just turns into a library. Let's just call it a library, okay? So I write some language and it pops out as this library, which is a DLL. Then I need a host, and the host is an executable. That executable will like run, do a thing, and it'll load in all of these different libraries. So exes load DLLs and do stuff. Now, in the case of this good question about IIS, where we have, I'm scrolling back here, Francois Melon is asking us about IIS, which is an executable. It's a host. IIS's job, this is the Internet Information Server. This is a web server for Windows. IIS is going to go and host your app. So how does it do that? Well, typically IIS will go and launch an exe, your app, or IIS can load your DLL, your app. And this is called out of process because there's two processes, right? And this is called in process because your DLL is inside that executable. So Francois is asking, if I publish the .NET website as a single file, it doesn't work. That makes sense because the single file is an executable, but you can't load an executable in process. You can't have an exe inside another exe. Additionally, if we look at our little Munich application that we just made, our little single file, right? This is our little Windows Forms app. It's only 64 megs. I double click on it and it's going to pop up. What happened there? What's inside there? Well, we actually have a tiny compressed version of .NET sitting inside that folder, and it has to kind of bloom like a flower, and it opens up into memory, and it has everything that you need inside there. And we need to decompress that in order to do what we want to do. That's not something that IIS is expecting. So single file executables is not a thing that you're going to want to be able to do on IIS. So to answer Francois' question, I would not expect that to work, and you don't want to do that if you can avoid that. So some good questions there.
Yeah, and actually there are tons of questions, right?
Tons of questions. Let's see if we can answer them. This is good. Now, Juan asks, can we use Blazor to build an add-in? And then we had another question about Blazor as well. So let's think about these things we have on the screen here. Now, what's Blazor? Okay, well, Blazor is WebAssembly, which is kind of, interestingly, an intermediate language, isn't it? Right? WebAssembly is a language, is kind of an IL for the browser. You know, you give it a language, and then the browser will go and will execute that. But what we've done here, Blazor is a version of .NET that runs in JavaScript and WebAssembly. And when you take your DLLs run inside the browser, right? So for example, if we go right now, in fact, in our browser over to the .NET website, we can see that we're live on .NET Live TV right now, okay? And this page is a Blazor page. So if I go and look at the F12 tools and see what's going on on the network, we can see somewhere in here, I can probably find one of these DLLs and scripts that get loaded. Here's Blazor. I can find a DLL. There's .NET 5.js right there. Here's Blazor coming in, right? And we have to load these DLLs in the browser. So if we then apply that to the questions that are being asked, could I write an add-in for Word? Well, if Word supports a web-based add-in, maybe, I think it'd be possible. If it's one of those Word things where they have a web panel on the side, could be possible. But could I automate Excel, which is different from the outside? Could I tell Excel what to do? No, because Excel uses COM and OLE automation. But if there's a JavaScript-based way to automate Excel, then sure, maybe. Is this what Blazor is for? No. Is it possible? Could be. Some very, very interesting questions. A little bit off topic, but definitely fun.
And as you said, you could create an open XML format, right? And save it. So in a sense, you can create Excel, but you cannot automate Excel.
Yeah, that's a good point. So automating Excel, that's a great question. That's a great point. So there's automating Excel, telling it what to do. And then there's another point, which is generating Excel, which to your point, it's just an XML file and a zip file. Excel is an open format, so you can go and create an Excel file, again, or a PDF or whatever, and then launch Excel. So that would be another way to make stuff as well. Sigfrido Rodriguez Santos is saying in Azure, the process model is equal. Indeed. So when I go and deploy this to Azure, Azure is behind a thing called application request routing. And there's two ways. There's self-contained, or there is a runtime version. So the runtime is on Azure. So do I have .NET published into Azure for me, or do I have the runtime already set? So if I go into my personal Azure right now and I look at one of my websites, I'm going to just log into my Azure, and I'll go and look at like the Hanselman homepage. Yeah, that's my blog actually. The homepage is here. Hanselman, there it is. And I click on configuration, and then on general, we see here .NET 5 is already installed. So I wouldn't need to send my own copy of .NET 5 up to Azure. I would just send my DLLs up there and it would work. And if you go to hanselman.com, which is my website, and you scroll down to the very, very bottom, you can see that I'm in fact using .NET 5 on that. And you can see that getting updated. Well, if you go over to my blog, which is a different website, and we go to the bottom, you can see that I'm still on the blog on .NET 3.1.8. Good questions.
Well, Carlos did a question. Probably he did it while I was experiencing these problems, and he did it twice. I'm sorry for that, Carlos. But anyway, he's asking if EF Core 5 works well with the C#9 records, and especially this constructor like syntax.
That is a really good question. I don't actually know that question. The question here from Carlos, I'll put it into the notepad, about C#9 records is an interesting one, because maybe someone else can answer that question. So there's classes in C# where you say public class something, and then there's public record something. And I don't know. It feels like it should. So EF is Entity Framework, the database stuff. I would honestly be searching for that. I don't do a lot of database work. Entity Framework, Core, C#9 records. Good questions. I bet you someone from Microsoft will answer. Oh, here you go. C#9 record. Someone's talking about it. Blah, blah, blah. It looks like they're thinking about it because you can see them talking about it here. Let's look for records in C#9. I'm on the GitHub. That's the nice thing about this being open source. People can answer these questions. Yeah, see, everyone's talking about it. So I think the intent is for it to work. Let's go and look at the launch blog. So EF Core launch.NET blog, announcing the release of. Jeremy Lickness is talking about it here. I don't know. Partial class. Good question. Let's see if anyone else notices in the chat. But I'm apologizing to Carlos. I don't know the answer to that, but I feel like it should.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Is probably a suggestion more than a question. Blazor for mobile native app, although there are.
I'm sorry, George. Let me interrupt. A number of people are answering this question. So they're pointing out that Volkmar is saying that EF5 does not support records because of the change tracking. And that's a great point, actually, because records are immutable. And the whole point is that you need to be able to track changes, and you can't with a class that can't change. So that's stuff. So now we know the answer to that. And Jochan is saying the same thing. So records are not supported by EF Core. Thank you. And then Carl DeBilly says the same. So that makes sense. The fact that records are immutable. Good stuff. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Sorry, please continue, sir.
Yep. Well, the suggestion was more like a suggestion, not a question, if Blazor can work for native apps, but I think there are solutions there, right?
Well, there's some interesting work going on. Particularly, there was a thing called, I think it was Steve Sanderson had a thing called Web Window, which was a tiny little web library that was kind of like Electron. So I think you're going to see lots of different new creative ways to make desktop apps. I think that we're in a situation now where there's lots and lots of ways to make Windows apps, and some people find that confusing, and some people find that empowering. So you've got WinForms, you've got WPF, right? You've got like WinUI and UWP. You've got React. You've got Blazor, you're going to have Maui. The thing is, though, it's all just different ways to get controls on the screen. And with something like Web Window, right, which is just popping up a dialog box and putting a UI in there, it's still a Windows app. It still has Windows controls and stuff like that. Just pick the one that you want. I noticed that there was a question a minute ago from Joshua again, who was asking about the future of desktop apps. Is it worth building a career? I don't see why not, because you need to remember that it's still Windows, or it's still Mac, or it's still Linux. It doesn't really matter. I think desktop apps still have value. I don't think the entire world is moving to the web. I bump into desktop apps all the time.
Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There are numerous questions, and they are coming very fast. I think we will try to answer as much as I can, I hope. A question by Nazar. Would you please tell us when Microsoft and generally, oops, sorry, they scroll.
Yeah, I see that. General exception handling in Blazor server side. I think that's not a question for me, because I personally can't keep track of everything so much. Is it good to work with Blazor, RASM, and gRPC? I think a person to ask that question of, Nasser, would be Captain Safia Abdullah. She is one of the main developers on Blazor, and she would be a person to know that. She knows more about Blazor than just about anybody, short of Steve Sanderson. So Safia would be the person to ask that question, Nasser Parzakar.
Super. I think we can move on for now. Does Blazor, WinUI, and Maui should coexist? I don't understand the should, but yeah.
Sorry, where's that one again?
The question was the last one, I think.
WinUI and Maui coexist. Yeah, everyone coexists. Remember that Blazor is about getting C# and controls into the web in a way that makes people not have to worry too much about the web. Maui is that multi-application. .NET Maui is cross-platform applications. So I think that's very different. And WinUI are those controls and the different things that are supported in Windows. So if I can make a Maui app and then light it up by adding different controls, that's fine. If I do Blazor, I'm doing that in the browser. There's room for all of these frameworks. You should use the one that makes you happy.
Yeah.
I see Edemir Veloz from Dominican Republic. ¿Qué lo que, Edemir? It's a very universal team we have here, George.
Sorry?
It's like a worldwide party on the stream today.
Indeed, a worldwide party. It's indeed. I didn't expect that, to be honest. It's just a Munich .NET meetup, right?
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, the question: when is, if you know, UWP getting .NET 5 support?
That is a good question. I don't know. I think that is Each time we have to get support for something, we have to have support forever. So when we add support, it means coordinating with these different things. Since .NET 5 just came out, that involves coordinating with the team that makes those things. So I don't actually have an answer for that one.
Well, there is, though, another interesting question about Blazor. I think Blazor is really something that people is interested about. And Ozzy, maybe the name, he's asking how easy it is to integrate a JS component, for example, a chart.js or something, into a Blazor app.
That's a good question. So when you have a Blazor app and you have a JavaScript component, I believe that there's a bridge where you can go and have those, see, you can have the calling JavaScript functions from .NET methods, right? So there's different ways to adjust and have script that is doing interop. So for example, here's some JavaScript, right? This is actual JavaScript embedded into HTML. And then you can then bring that in, you can inject that and then call that JavaScript from Blazor. So basically jumping from C# into JavaScript. So remember that when you're doing Blazor, you're thinking about the DOM, you're thinking about Java, you're thinking about what's happening inside of the web DOM. And if you can interact with those components, you just need to figure out how you place them on the page. I don't know if I have any examples, but I can actually ask Safia if she's got one. I'll chat her on my Teams, internal Teams chat right now. Oh, she's busy. She's actually giving a presentation, so I will chat her. I'll chat her later.
Oh, indeed, worldwide, we have greetings from Egypt, Switzerland, Nigeria, Greece. Strato says that lockdown and Scott is a win situation for an event. So yeah,
that's very kind. That's very kind. Actually, hey, if I want to grab one, George, Metal Typhoon is saying, can you write C# libraries to be consumed by other languages? I think there was a thing that Miguel de Acaza did that was like the, what was it called? It was like the something Otron. He likes to give things a funny name, and it was like, I want to say Swift-O-Tron or 2000. He gives things funny names like the whatever-O-Thon. Here we go. Swift-O-Matic. Allow you to support Swift code into a .NET project. Swift-O-Matic.net. Try another search engine here. Here we go, binding tools for Swift. So here's an example. This might be the opposite of what the question was there. Embedinator, there you go. Thank you, Metal Typhoon. There's Swift-O-Tron and there's Embedinator. Basically, these are different tools that turn .NET into libraries. So you can consume things one way or the other. So let's say that you are doing work in Android or iOS or another platform, you want to make your .NET libraries available to that. Or the inverse, where you have some C# code and you want to bring in some Swift and use it inside of those things. So here, this is allowing you to basically pull in Swift, and then the Embedinator. It looks like it's a little bit old, but I guess it works. A tool for turning .NET libraries into libraries that can be consumed by other languages. So that's pretty interesting. Good job finding that one, Embedinator. Embedinator 4000.
Yeah, well, just to continue with the countries, Hungary, Sudan, Italy, Iran, I mean, it's non-stop. So I'm sorry if I missed the country, Netherlands. Yeah, well, anyway, Christopher is asking that if anyone seen an integration between Node-RED and .NET 5. I'm not so sure personally.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. These are questions I would not have expected. So Node-RED is a flow-based tool that allows you to do kind of IoT development in what's called low code. And when you do things in Node-RED, you're basically drag and dropping into these what are called flows. And the flows have these kind of cool visual development tools. Let me see if I can get into the flow here. And is there any integration? No, we have not yet done any integration for that at all. But the idea is very, very interesting. Basically, let's see if we can go and make one. They let me do it. They want me to just paste it. I'll do it later. Anyway, we don't have any integration yet, but we do have the .NET IoT GitHub, and there's a lot of work happening on that. And in fact, recently, Cam Soper on Twitter just announced some work that he did on Cam Soper IoT. There we go. He just did the .NET IoT libraries. So let's look at the URL here. It's docs.microsoft.com/.NET/IoT. And there's a wonderful bunch of documentation that Cam Soper has worked on. So these allow you to do .NET apps to Raspberry Pi, to blink LEDs and read environmental conditions from your sensors. We've got lots and lots of great support. So while we don't have Node-RED support, we definitely have a lot of support for smaller devices.
Super, super. I do have to continue with the countries: Costa Rica, Tunisia, Romania. I'm trying not to forget anyone. So
yeah, I saw Sudan in there.
Yeah. Well, there are quite a few expected announcements during this .NET 5 thingy, and one I think that we all need to keep in mind is that .NET 5 is battle ready, right? I mean, it's being tested already with 2 release candidates, and the next LTS .NET 5 is not an LTS. Next LTS is .NET 6, and that means we should get into it.
Well, so we've actually been running .NET 5 in production for a long time on the .NET website itself, which gets many, many tens of millions of hits every month. We've got other, big partners, all the Microsoft properties that you would expect using .NET as well. The schedule that you pointed out here, going between 5 and 6, 7, and 8, you see how the even numbers are LTS. Again, that's just a statement of support. It's not a statement of quality. But right now, you could start working on 5, and then when you upgrade to 6, you could stay there for a couple of years and have long-term support. It's basically trying to follow the same format that Ubuntu does, where there's a long-term support version coming out every few years. So yeah, we definitely feel like it is ready for prime time, and the perf improvements, I think, are the real thing that's worth calling out. The perf improvements are nuts. Let me see if I can find the section on perf, because it's so, here we go, look at this.
Wow, big improvements.
Like, I just upgraded my websites, and I didn't have to do anything, it just got faster. So there's a lot of work happening. Hello to our friends in Mauritius, Austria, Sudan. A lot of fun people. This is an international party here. I love this.
Yeah. So it seems.
Costa Rica, Panama.
Austria,
one thing I think was worth pointing out was Project Thai. Did you see that question?
Yep.
Yeah. The question was about Project Thai. Is it a competition for Kubernetes? And it is definitely not. The intention is to make it easier to go and make a microservices application. So for example, let's take our Munchen folder here. I'm going to go and close my Visual Studio, and I'm going to just take all of this code here, and I'm going to just remove it. And I'm going to see, like, if someone said to you, like right now, can you make me a microservices application? Do you think you could do it in just a few minutes? It would be kind of challenging. You would have to go and set up Kubernetes and figure out, the front end and the back end and all this kind of stuff. So, tying that all together would be somewhat challenging. So here, oops, I made the wrong folder name. Let's do this. We've got sorry, I don't have an umlaut on the München. I need to do better with my umlauts. I'll just delete that folder and let's do this. I'm going to say .NET new Razor, and we'll make a front end. Okay, so here's our little Razor. And then instead of saying .NET run, I'm going to say tie, and I'm going to run the front end. It says loading application details, and it says dashboard running. Now I'm running a newer version of the Windows terminal. So look what happens when I hover my mouse on this link. You see how I can actually click on the link in the terminal?
Yeah. Wow.
Which is nice. Yeah, it's cool, huh?
Yeah,
so look at that. So here's my application running. This is the dashboard, and I see my application now, and there's my front end. Okay? So here's my dashboard. Now that's a lot easier than a Kubernetes dashboard, but it's not meaning to replace Kubernetes. We haven't used any containers yet. We just spun up a process. Okay? Now, let's say we need a back end. So right now we have front end. Let's go and say we'll make a new web API and we'll do a back end. Okay, so now we have front end and back end. Now let's make a new solution. Oops, .NET new solution. And I can say, hey, let's add the front end and the back end into the solution. Now we have München solution, front end and back end. So now I'm just going to say tie run. And then watch the log here. Loading application details, running the dashboard, building each project. Look, front end running, back end running. Now let's go back to our dashboard. Look at that, there's the front end and the back end. But you see that they're running as projects. They're not running as, excuse me, they're not running as Docker containers because there's no reason to right now. Right now, we just need to manage them and coordinate them, right? But let's say that one of those things needed to use like Redis or something like that, okay? I could come down here and say tie init, which is going to make a little YAML file. There's my tie.yaml. And now I'll open that YAML file up in Visual Studio Code. And I'll bring that over onto this monitor. You see, I've just got front end and back end. It's not that complicated. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add to the front end and the back end a little bit more information there. We'll add in like a Redis, which would not be a project, right? Redis would be a dependency. It would be something more. So let's take this. Like this, we've got our service, a back end as a project, our front end as a project, and then these Redis and the Redis CLI would be Docker images. Very simple, not trying to compete with Kubernetes, just trying to make things easier. Now watch when I hit tie run, what happens? Those two services are external, right? So we're gonna build our, look, it just said running container, but the back end and the front end are still processes. And we can see this reflected in our dashboard. Now, in the future, we might turn these into containers, but right now they don't need to be. We just want to make it so we can go as fast as possible, right?
Super. Super.
Oh, I'm hearing some information from our friends here in the chat.
Yeah.
Who are giving me crucial international information here, George. If you bear with me for a second, I'm just going to go and hit start dot, and I'm going to bring this up, and I'm going to take the folder that we made here. This is very important for international. There it is. I want to make sure that we don't offend. There we go. Alt 252. Now we've saved our relationship with our German friends.
Super. Yep. Now it's all corrected.
Yes. All is right with the world again, my friend.
Perfect, because it seems, since we are the Munich.NET meetup, apparently besides the rest of the world, people from Munich should be here. Matthias Koch is here anyway, so
Look at this: Ukraine, Senegal, Spain, Dakar, Florianopolis, Brazil, Peru,
Azerbaijan. The list goes on. Malaysia, Kazakhstan. The list goes on. I mean, we could probably have people from all around the world. So it's very nice.
Could. Well, I definitely think that folks should be excited about .NET 5 and the stuff that we're doing. And the folks who are coming here from out of town to Munich, our friends from Bangkok and Denmark and Nigeria, should feel free to come and visit the Munich .NET user group when lockdown is over, and maybe give a talk and share their thoughts as well. And then California also here too, snuck in.
Definitely. I mean, we are all waiting for this. It might be a year away, but it will happen. We will have live events again.
Yep. Folks are saying, folks are asking about Apple Silicon. Absolutely, the intent is to support these things, right? We'll make it happen. Well, Stratos from Greece is pointing out the global .NET user group, and I want to point something out. If you go to the .NET Foundation, my friends, or the .NET Foundation, and under community, we have a section here called .NET Meetups. And within .NET Meetups, there is a section here called .NET Virtual User Group. So Stratos, in fact, the global .NET Meetup exists, and we're part of it. The Munich .NET group is a global virtual user group. So what you can do is sign up. If you have a user group, you can be a part of this. Look, here's one happening in Brazil. Here's one en français. If you have a user group somewhere and you want to use this platform that George and friends are using right now, that George and Johan are helping us with, you can do this. Stratos and the friends in Greece are also members. And what this means is that if you go right now to the .NET homepage and you click on Live TV, Munich.net, look at this. You know about this? You are live on the Microsoft homepage right now. So your user group can get more exposure. We would love to have you join it. And the .NET user groups are really just a part of meetup.com. So you can go and check out meetup.com and join today and get your shows on our homepage.
And we are a live example of that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and see, look, folks are in the chat there. Seyun Adeyinka is saying they're in Germany and they want to come and join your user group. So we're already meeting new friends. Yep,
definitely. Thank you very much for this. I mean, especially to the .NET Foundation user group, their support was crucial for that, because we run it. I don't even know how many people are actually watching right now the YouTube live stream, but I think there are quite a few, that almost 300. Yeah, wow.
That's great.
Yeah, amazing. Super.
I also appreciate that you used a younger picture of me. I don't know who put this picture here, but I think I'm a younger man in this picture.
Actually, I think that it was from another presentation or conference or something, because
I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. I know that the you can look at the Azure dashboard and you can see that it's a little different, and then you can look at the shapes of the tabs.
You are right.
Like an older version of Chrome.
You are right.
Yeah. My forehead is even big here, but still not so big.
And you are not wearing a mask, so it's pre-corona time.
Also true.
Yeah. Let's see if we have any more questions, because I think it's around time, right?
Yeah, I think we're running out of time. One thing I want to say, just a little bit of advertising, if you don't mind me using your user group to advertise. I want to encourage folks to check out my podcast called Hansel Minutes. Lots of lovely people from all over the world You can subscribe on your iTunes or your Android. Check out all these lovely people. And then also my YouTube. I want to get to 100,000 on my YouTube. I'm very close. So if you can tell your friends and your parents to subscribe to my YouTube. I've got a bunch of good videos I like called Computer Stuff They Didn't Teach You. And I've got another one coming out just in a couple of days where I call Explaining the Cloud and Cloud Architecture. So this is coming up in 5 days. So if you go and subscribe and then you click the little bell, the little notification bell, it'll tell you when this premiere video comes up. Look how serious I am in the picture. So I would definitely check out that one, my YouTube. Please subscribe. Omran asked a question earlier about web forms. Maybe we can fit that last one in really quick before we get going.
Sorry for
Repeat
that
question again, Omran. Because in fact, while we're waiting for him to ask that, my blog, used to be web forms. My blog, if you go to the dates, did you know my blog goes back to 2002?
Wow.
18 years. So if you're doing web forms, in fact, if you go to the .NET website and you click on architecture, we have a section here called Blazor for web forms developers. So I would encourage Omran Mugbil to check that out because we think that Blazor is a great opportunity for people to move their web forms applications over.
Yep. Omran, you didn't, can you
You can find me on Twitter if you want to, and I can answer your questions.
Yeah, I think that might be easier.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks so much for having me, George and Johan. I appreciate you guys putting this together. This is great.
No, thank you for being here. Thanks, of course, to the .NET Foundation. I said it a lot of times, but it's really something different. I mean, this World Party, it's also because of them. So, yeah, thanks. Thank you, Scott. Thank you all, guys, that you offered this opportunity to have a fantastic meetup and a fantastic evening, actually. It's something, I think, a bit different during these lockdown things, to have an evening that you really forget about everything and you enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I appreciate you opening your doors in Germany and Munich to all of our friends worldwide. And let's hopefully get the word out to other folks that are in and around Germany to join your user group as lockdown starts to ease. And we'll say thank you, everybody. We'll see you later.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Ciao. Bye.